Is that well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the Heavy Hitters Live is on your TV. As you already know, the regular lineup as goes as follows. I am 6MK Live, aka K Styles in the building. To the right side of me,
Is
to the
something going
right.
on with it? All right, can y'all hear the internet? Is it some choppy? Somebody's choppy.
Hold on. Hold on, might be me. Hold on. Let me see something. Ooh.
You sound better now.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. And right below Don, we have the minister, Jew Talk Sports in the building.
Good evening, fellas. What's going on, Mac? Good to have you on the show, man.
Hey, I ain't even introduced myself because it was choppy. So let me go back. Cause I'm the Don, and I am awesome.
He's came to play. Oh man. Oh man. Hey man, like you see on the screen, man, we got a special guest for today's episode. We got Mac, the Buffalo in the building.
What's up, guys? Hey, again, thanks for having me on. It's pretty cool to see you guys bring in guests from other teams. So the fact that you guys considered me, for a Browns guy, I greatly appreciated. And thanks again for having me.
Oh man, no problem, man. Like I said, we kind of like having the football conversation, just getting different perspectives, not just from the Falcons, but just from other teams in itself to kind of help better our game and our knowledge on football as well. So, hey man, we appreciate you coming on with us. So let's go ahead and give a shout out to the people that's already in the building right now. We got Silk Legacy, we got Leo, we got Must Be Fine, we got Maurice Martin, we got D Coleman, Sports Talk, we got Madam Howell in the building, we got we got Fred, King Fred, Ryan Smith, and Ultra Shadow 97, man. So appreciate y'all. Um, all right, Don, man, go ahead, kick us off, man.
All
Hi-
right. So, Mac, first off, let everybody know where they can find your content at, man.
I'm on, Twitter. By the way, I refuse to call it X, but I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all with the same name, THA underscore Buffalo. I still do some writings over at Fansided under Dog Pound Daily. And you'll see me pop up on podcasts kind of all over the place. That's kind of like my new goal for 2026, right? Is to try to network as best as I can. And this is one of my stops.
Okay, good, good. Well, hopefully we the first stop of the 2026 for you.
Unfortunately, I had Sideline Sports have me on last week. Packers and a Bears fan.
Okay.
So that was an interesting conversation. But I've never actually, conversed with Falcons fans. So I think that this is really cool opportunity. Get to hear kind of especially because I want to say the last time that the Browns played the Falcons was 2022, and there's not really a lot of kind of conversation, a lot of mixing, between the fan bases. So it's kind of cool to hear your guys' perspective.
Well, we'll appreciate you, man. Speaking of the Browns, how long have you been a fan of the Browns, and how long you been covering the Browns?
So I've been a fan of the team since I popped out in 1995. Unfortunately, I was born 5 months before the move.
Oh
So
my
my
goodness.
first memory was the Tim Couch years after '99. The first Browns play that I can remember vividly was the 0-2 wild card game in Pittsburgh. Dennis Northcutt dropped a wide open pass, and the obscenities that I heard both my father and my uncle scream out loud still kind of rack my brain. But the only thing that racks my brain more is the fact that Kelly Holcomb threw for 400 passing yards, and
I
they
remember the
still
game.
didn't win the game.
Or the
Yeah,
fact that he the but
Woo, boy, that's a
the fact
name.
that he said Dennis Northcutt, I already know, boy.
I
Yeah,
remember that game.
he'd been through some stuff right there.
He was so fast and he was such an electric player. It's so crazy because it's like he was such an explosive player. The guy had wheels on him, but for whatever reason, he just couldn't catch the football, and it was just heartbreaking because you would see him wide open. I mean, nobody within like 15 yards of him, and just right through his hands.
Mm.
Cause that was right around the time when y'all still had Andre Davis and stuff like that too. With Andre
Yeah,
Davis and
yeah.
Antonio Bryan, I think. Wasn't he
They
on
had
Yeah.
that
Courtney
team or was
Brown.
that afterwards?
They had Courtney
No, no,
Brown.
no. Yeah, because Courtney Brown was the first pick of
99.
2000, or
Okay.
yeah, because it was 2000 because Tim Couch was in '99, I believe,
Yeah, you're right.
or I might be having it flipped, but no, I mean they had like a crazy bit like runner receivers, but like common theme, a lot of them just couldn't haul in the football when they had to, and it was. Man, it was because I mean Quincy Morgan had that problem. Braylon Edwards had that problem.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Don't bring up my boy Braylon like that. I love
Hey,
Braylon.
hey, man, I loved Braylon Edwards. The one thing that I will say that's really weird about the Browns fan base is that a strong portion are Buckeye fans.
Oh Lord.
And I'm not, and like for any Buckeye fans listening right now, please do not take offense, but a large portion of you guys are absolutely medically insane.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And you take it, some of these people, they take it into the Browns fan base, and it's just like, well, I don't like the guy because he went to Michigan, and it's just like, who the hell cares, man? I'm trying to win a football game. I don't care if they get the talent from Michigan, from Florida, from Alaska. Hell, you can come off the boat from Europe if you can score points. I could care less. And they gave Braylon such a hard time about being from Michigan, like if it was his choice. I mean, especially back then before NIL and everything was like under the table and you really had to work for that college money. Like these players couldn't control where they go.
Yeah, I know. I've heard they give Mason. Yeah, they
Yeah,
give
Mason Graham. No,
Mason Graham a
they
hard
give him
time.
crap, and it's just like, okay, well, he's part of the reason why Miles broke the record. So
exactly. Thank you. Exactly. Dude, you gotta double Mason Graham. You just got to. So
Wow.
Okay. So my question to you is based off of this past draft that y'all had in Cleveland, which is kind of considered like one of the better drafts like the franchise has had in a long time, man. So how do you think about that? How you think about the rookies that came in?
It really surprised me how well Andrew Berry drafted. Now when you look into it, Chris Polian, Bill Polian's son, recently joined the front office last year, and DeQuell Jackson interned for a year and did their rookie draft prep. So it kind of started making a little bit more sense why magically out of nowhere, because and I don't want to sit here and say that Andrew Berry's drafts since 2020 have been terrible, but they really haven't been great, especially at depth, So when he came out with this draft, and it was crazy because you look at it and, and this is feelings about Dylan Gabriel and Shador aside. The rest of the draft is A+ starters. Number one, you have Mason Graham, a guy that you have to double team against the run. and has enough talent to win the one-on-ones. Then the next pick, you have All-American linebacker Carson Schlesinger, who just won Pro Football Writers, defensive player, rookie defensive player of the year. He's probably going to win the AP. And then after that, you have Harold Fannin, who I had as tight end 1B. I really thought that him and Tyler Warren were step by step. But for whatever reason, scouts said, "Oh, he's small and runs weird." Okay, dude. I'll take 700 yards out of a tight end any year in the National Football League. I could care less how he runs, considering the fact that he's dragging 5 defenders with him.
Well, I would say Daryl Fannin, that was actually one of my favorite players coming into that last year's draft in itself. So, like I said,
his tape was crazy good, crazy good. And then you have the 1-2 punch of Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. I love the way that Quinshon Judkins runs. I think the Browns really need to focus their offense around him next year and really fortify that offensive line to give him a chance, because he was getting hit in the backfield. I mean, it's crazy to see a guy that gets so constantly hit in the backfield, but he's still top 10 in yards after contact, which is really just nutty to me. And then Dylan Sampson really proved that he can be a third down back, catching out of the backfield. He struggled in pass protection early, but I thought he, really cleaned that up going down the line. So that was great. And then, of course, you have the kind of the really one, because regardless how you feel about Shedeur, I still think that, they should give him more of an opportunity, really fortify the offensive line, give him weapons and give him a chance to compete, But the only blemish in this draft is Dylan Gabriel. I had him as a day 3 quarterback. So did 31 teams. In the National Football League, the Browns were the only person with a day 2 grade on him. And I really thought, and funny enough, I'm talking to you guys about a Falcons player that you guys drafted in the 3rd round that's pretty much a stud, Xavier Watts, right?
Mm-hmm.
He could have definitely contributed in the back end of the secondary, especially with, Jim Schwartz loving the 3 safety looks. I mean, that would have been disgusting with him, Grant Delpit, and Ronnie Hickman. So, that's really the only blemish that I have in this draft. I thought it was a good, especially for the fact that, most Browns fans kind of had the feeling that it was going to be a rebuild year. So to have that draft to kind of put some foundation around and really kind of add playmakers while fortifying key positions, I thought it was a great draft. And if Andrew Berry even gets half the talent that he got the last draft, I think the Browns, are going to be moving in a positive direction.
The fact that he said DeQuell Jackson just brought back another memory.
Yeah.
Oh, he was my favorite linebacker growing up, man, because it was like, and here's how crazy the Browns fandom is. So like when I really started watching like each game and followed, like back then it was a 16-game season, but when I really started following the Browns was like 2006, 2007, and it was cool because DeQuell Jackson was the only Browns player. I mean, yeah, there's Josh Cribbs, but he was the only Browns player that would show up in the leaderboards. So every Monday I would sit there on NFL.com and refresh the stats, and DeQuell Jackson right up at the top of tackles. So it was cool because I would see that and I would say, wow, like he's one of us and he's at the top of the league. Because before Baker, the Browns didn't really get much coverage because it was the same, conversation of like, oh, well, why are we talking about this team? They've been an expansion team for the past, like, at that point, it would have been 8 years. But like, like even my dad, like when I have conversations with him about the Browns, he goes, man, you have no idea. You don't know about the old Browns. You don't know about the Bernie Kosar days and, and all that stuff. So the DeQuell Jackson, he was really cool to see it. Sad to say, that he was only an intern and he couldn't stick with the organization for whatever reason. I don't want to speculate. But it was sad that he couldn't stay with the team because, a lot of teams nowadays are having former players put in a little bit of, insight and input. That's why coming back to you guys, Matt Ryan as a GM. I mean, no offense to to Michael Vick, but like Matt Ryan had just a longer career, and for a lot of guys, he was the face of the franchise for a long time. So to have him come in and and provide some insight and some input, I mean, who better to help you pick a quarterback than a guy that brought your team to the Super Bowl? Something that and correct me if I'm wrong, but like that was the only Falcons Super Bowl appearance in their history, right?
No, we went in '98.
Yeah.
We went in
Under
'98.
Mr. Blank's era, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Blank owned the team. This is our first. That was our first time. But we went in '98 with Dan Reeves as our head coach, and we lost against the Broncos that year. That was Elway's last game. But
So who would have been the quarterback in '98?
that
Chris
was
Chandler.
Chris Chandler.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And,
Gotcha,
and no, you ain't, and no offense at all about the Vic, because every real Falcons fans, we know
We don't care.
who's the best quarterback out of the two. So like again, it's a Vic versus Ryan thing here, and it's been like this since the day Matt Ryan got drafted. But like we say, man, it's a great move that we're doing. We cleaned house. We got rid of Rich McKay. We fired Raheem Morris, and we got rid of Terry Fontenot, the GM, and we brought in Matt Ryan. The organization is really trying to win. We're trying to figure out how we can get back in the mix of making the playoffs. Because when Matt Ryan was here, we was making the playoffs. The first 5 years we didn't have a losing season, and then fell off a couple of years, and then we made it back. We made it back to the playoffs, went to the Super Bowl, and then the next year we made the playoffs, lost to the potential Super Bowl champions Philadelphia Eagles, and then we haven't made the playoffs since. So bringing somebody back to have a vision of this team, we're excited for it. Now I know everybody wanna. This is where everybody came to talk about is our new head coach, Kevin Stefanski. Now, we know that you've been covering the team for quite some time, so you know more about Kevin Stefanski than anybody on this panel, anybody in the city of Atlanta, anybody that is a Falcons fan. So if you don't mind enlightening us about who is Kevin Stefanski, what's his philosophy, and what are the good, the bad, and the ugly, far as what you've seen and what you encountered in Cleveland when he was in Cleveland?
Yeah. So the first thing about Kevin Stefanski, in terms of the pros, it's stability. You're getting the same guy day in and day out. Sometimes that's really frustrating because after a loss, he's going to give you the same answers that he would after a win. There's nothing really spooks the guy, especially with like what he's gone through here in Cleveland. You've never really seen him flinch. You've never really seen him like you know what I mean? Like he's that kind of guy to where he's the stone face. He provides the consistency for some of those players. Like he's not the guy that's going to flip out in meetings. He's a real players coach. So a lot of guys, kind of, I wouldn't say gravitate and play hard, but more or less there's a mutual understanding. And a lot of guys, when they, go to battle with Stefanski, so to speak, a lot of them have really good things to say afterwards. In terms of a fit, I think this is really great. Because he was running a lot of wide zone, something that a very elusive runner like Bijan Robinson is really going to thrive in. He brought Bill Callahan with him, and Bill Callahan's one hell of an O-line coach. I can tell you firsthand, the Browns O-line really hasn't been the same without him. Because and people tell me, oh, well, it's the talent. Go ahead, look at the 2023 rushing stats compared to 2024, 2025. At the end of 2023, they were running out tackles, Jerron Christian and James Hudson, two guys that wouldn't even be backups or a swing tackle on normal teams, right? So, Bill Callahan, is one of those guys to where, I mean, look at Ethan Poshik. Ethan Poshik was a backup in Seattle, but he saw a guy that, oh, okay, this is a 6'5" center, 300 pounds, and he's got a wide step to him. I can do something with this. And he described him as a great ball of clay. And, now before his knee injury, in 2022, Ethan Poshik was a damn good center, and he was playing like a top 10 guy, so I think that it's a very good fit. Now the bad, I would say, there's not a lot to his resume, and his resume comes with asterisks, right? He won a playoff game, but he wasn't at that playoff game. He did the game planning. He did the first, the scripted, 12 plays, but it wasn't, he didn't provide anything after that. After that, it was Alex Van Pelt's show. And then you look at games over his time here in Cleveland, and things weren't great after the 12 play drive. And, for those listening that don't understand that, so every NFL team and college, they do a thing called the first 11 plays, first 12 plays, where it's scripted, where you're running the same play for sure. That's something that they go over, in that Thursday, Friday meeting. They're saying, here are the first 12 plays. We're going to call them in chronological order. And then from there, you adjust. Well, the first 12 plays, most of the time for Kevin Stefanski have been great. It's after that. It's being the ability to adjust, right? The wide zone worked great. And then defense is adjusted, and he really hasn't, and that's kind of the part of the reason why he failed in Cleveland. The ugly has to be just the fact of with him being a play caller and a head coach, a lot of it gets lost in translation, and it's a good thing that a head coach really trusts his players, but he's not one to light a fire, like right under him. Like he's not the kind of guy that is going to harp on them about mistakes. An article came out last year that he wasn't even, grilling Watson in meetings when he was missing obvious throws. But then once Jameis Winston came in, he flipped the script. That didn't sit well with the locker room. But in terms of, not harping on the details, you can look at the stats, and the Browns have been god awful in pre-snap penalties. They were second in 2020 with 46. They were third, same number, 46 year after in 2021. They had an anomaly in 2022 being the 24th. They were first in back-to-back years, 2023 and 2024. And then this past year, they were tied for 8th in pre-snap penalties. So you're going to see, and like, this might be different here in Atlanta because, you've had consistency with the offensive roster, but it's going to be really hard when you're bringing young guys along and, you have a guy that isn't harping on, false starts. He's not going to be a guy that's harping on, maddening, illegal motions, maddening illegal formations, which, you think you're an offensive guy. Well, like, why can't you get your guys lined up? And then, the other part of the equation is, all right, so, you were top 10 in points once in 2023, and that's when Joe Flacco had his run. You were top 10 once in point differential, same year, 2023. What happened when they transitioned from Alex Van Pelt? I still don't know, because it looked like, and Kevin was a person that sometimes fell on the sword, but he would tell you outright, this is my decision. This is what I want to do. And then, you have leaks saying that like it wasn't his decision to let Alex Van Pelt go. It wasn't his decision on the QB room, but like, so that's kind of frustrating because again, you don't know what is what. And like when you're losing those simple answer in press conferences that are extremely vague and won't give you anything, they're wildly frustrating because you're trying to find answers, but he's not giving you any. So I would just say the conversation about Kevin Stefanski after his first year in Atlanta compared to after his third year in Atlanta are going to be two totally different things. I have good suspicion that the offense this year in Atlanta, I think it's going to be pretty damn good. I think that they're going to get the wide zone going. Kirk Cousins has worked with Kevin Stefanski before. He knows that offense. So at the very least, the floor, for points and everything, I think the floor itself is going to be pretty high. But the question goes, okay, what happens after? What happens when you need to adjust? What happens when you face a front seven, like he faced in, Baltimore and Pittsburgh? Because that was his biggest thing. He could never really slow down a pass rush. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But again, I think in the first year, they're going to get things humming. But the question is, can he adjust? Because he didn't really show that in Cleveland.
Okay.
All right. So, Mike, do you have anything to add, man?
I mean, sounds like he's correct me if I'm wrong, but he sounds like he's related to Raheem Morris. Is that far?
I don't know if I would say that. The biggest thing with Raheem Morris is that he was in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he wasn't really a scheme guru. He was more of like a lesser version of Mike Tomlin, to where he got his guys to play with him. But like that only gets you so far in the NFL. Like you need three things for a great head coach. You need guys to follow you into battle. You need a good scheme. Like you need answers to the test, and you have to be obsessed with details. And I really thought that Raheem Morris really only had one of the three attributes, and I thought it was cool how the Falcons turned it on later in the year. But like, again, that only gets you so far because, and granted, it is the NFC South. I'm not trying to, rag on the Saints, the Panthers, or the Bucks, but like it's one of those divisions to where you only really have to win 9 to 10 games to win that division.
Exactly.
So, I think Kevin Stefanski brings that high floor, but like, I don't know how he's going to break the ceiling because he's just never shown that he's been able to do that. But again, I think that he's an upgrade from Raheem Morris because he has the base level of a really good scheme to fit with all these players. And he's a guy that loves tight ends. So I thought a lot of the conversation that I heard out of Atlanta the past couple of years is Michael Pitt. Like Kyle Pitts. What are we doing with Kyle Pitts? Well, Stefanski is a guy that really loves his tight ends, and he loves multiple tight ends too. So he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to get Pitts, in my opinion, close back to that 1,000-yard season that he's shown he's capable of.
Exactly. And then you got the president of football, Matt Ryan. He had that he had that 1,000 yards with Matt Ryan his last year in Atlanta. So again, that he has the signs of doing it. So Jew, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, man, I have a question for him. And personally, I've been trying to calm these Falcons fans down about this whole Kevin Stefanski thing. Personally, I think that he's much better coach than Raheem Morris, just for the mere fact that he calls plays. So I want to get some Max thoughts on. I know at last year he let Tommy Reese end up taking over the plays, but from my understanding, and you may not know this, but my assumption is that he's going to call the plays, even though they're saying that they're bringing Tommy Reese in. And you give me your thoughts on his scheme, because personally, I think that he has a really good offensive scheme. I think that it'll work perfect as you talk about the wide zone, because that's what the Falcons already do. And I don't know if you're familiar with our team last year, but Zach Robinson, he refused to be bullheaded about running the ball and giving Bijan the ball. So from what I know about Kevin Stefanski, is he fed Nick Chubb the ball when he was y'all running back, and he was a top 5 running back when he was with the Browns. So my assumption of Kevin Stefanski, just looking at it from my view, I think he's going to come in and he's going to elevate the running game with Bill Callahan, with Bijan. I expect him to take that running game to the next level. So I kind of want to get your thoughts, Matt, about the running game and his scheme, because I think it'll fit perfect.
So in terms of overall, like if you zoom out, on those seasons with Nick Chubb, you would see, okay, they're top 5 in rushing attempts. He was feeding this guy. But if you just zoom in just like a little bit and kind of take it situation by situation, there are a lot of times where he just kind of opened up the passing game, and it was almost like it was, pass first offense. Now, part of it in 2021 was because he was trying to prove something, with Baker Mayfield. So like there was that kind of, situation to where, Baker was basically caught not knowing the playbook. So when Baker called out the coach said, fine, we're going to open up the playbook. Show me what you got. And for example, everybody cites the Christmas Day game, against Green Bay. Well, Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson both averaged 5 yards a carry. Why were you having a guy with his arm in a cuff throw over 35 times? That's just not a winning formula. Now I think it's going to be different in Atlanta. Number one, there's not going to be excuses on quarterback because, Kirk Cousins played with him in Minnesota. And I'm assuming, Matt Ryan is going to ask Stefanski and say, hey, what do you think of this quarterback room? Hey, there's this guy out there. Do you think that he would be a good starter? I think it's going to be a situation to where, if not this year, next year, Kevin's going to be able to pick his quarterback. So I don't think that they'll run into like a butts heads, but there were a lot of situations where he got scared. There was a lot of times in Pittsburgh, a lot of times against Baltimore, to where the run will get stuffed and he'll automatically think, okay, we got to open up this pass game to alleviate the pressure and kind of lessen these boxes to get the run game going again. What in reality, he just needs to kind of stick with it, because when you have a running back like a Bijan Robinson, like a Nick Chubb, it's the ball's bound to go in the end zone. It's just a matter of volume. And he was very combative against that, especially in 2022. I was one of the big, the Browns are, I believe the record was 6-2 when Nick Chubb got 20 plus carries. And people asked him about that, and he kind of scoffed at it. He was just like, yeah, no, we'll just give Nick Chubb the ball, every down. But in reality, that's kind of how it needs to be in the NFL, especially when you're bringing along, a quarterback that's not top 10. And no offense to Kirk Cousins, but he's a little bit over the hill. He's not that top 12 guy that he used to be, right? So you got to lean on that run game. And now's the time to do it, because, they thought for a long time in Cleveland, we want to save Nick Chubb. We want to preserve it. But look at Derrick Henry. The only difference between Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb is just the catastrophic injury. Because Derrick Henry had, carries upon carries, and nothing really ever happened to him. With running backs, it's either they still got it or they don't. And that comes in an instant, like a running back's career will be over in a blink of an eye, you know. So that's kind of like my thing when it comes to Kevin Stefanski running the ball. But again, like the circumstances are a lot different. You know, no shade against New Orleans defensive line, but they're not, you know, Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport are no Cam Hayward and TJ Watt, right? You know, the Panthers, while they have an okay defense and they were a playoff team, you know, that defense isn't scaring anybody. And Tampa Bay, I still don't know why Todd Bowles has a job between me and you, because like in terms of defensively, he doesn't really add anything, and they don't have anybody of significant in the front four anyway. So again, I mean, that wide zone, it's definitely a scheme that I've loved for a long time, simply because the offensive line is blocking the same way every down. You know, the center is doing a reach block on that 1 or 3 technique every single play, whether it's a pass play, whether it's a run play, and that really screws with linebackers, right? So you know, in closing, I think it's a great scheme. Now, in terms of Tommy Rees, I think that's a good call simply because there's familiarity, right? You know, he knows that he's not going to butt heads with Tommy. He knows that if stuff goes south, he has a guy that he can turn to. I definitely think that he'll call plays. I mean, that's the whole point, that you bring him in, right? You bring him in for the scheme. You bring him in for the offensive mindset. So you got to have him call plays. But I think part of it too was there was a lot of, and again, I mean, it's Cleveland. So I think that a lot of the problems in Cleveland was because it was Cleveland. And Stefanski had his issues, trust me. But I think a lot of it was amplified, you know, in Cleveland. You know, for example, there was just a lot of pettiness to where Kevin wanted to win his way, but he didn't want to do anything, you know, and do everything that it takes to win. And that was part of his problem. You know, great example when we talk about play calling in 2024. When they were 1-5 and Deshaun Watson goes down, he goes, all right, Ken Dorsey, call plays. And that was his way of saying, all right, everybody's going to harp on me and say that I do a bad job. So why don't you have someone else do it? And, you know, when Ken Dorsey became the play caller, you know, the Browns started scoring 20 points a game. So I think part of that was Jameis Winston closing his eyes and, you know, heaving it into double coverage every play. You know, you're bound to hit some of those deep passes, right? But, you know, Kevin, I think this is a really great situation for him because, one, it gives him a stable organization. You know, Matt Ryan really knows his stuff. You know, you can't be a dumb quarterback and be an MVP, right? Mm-hmm. You have Arthur Blank, who is one hell of an owner and is a guy that, you know, he's not out of touch, right? He understands what's going on, and he's had winning teams before. You know, like you know, he had the Vic years, and then he was able to rebuild, and then he transitioned into the Matt Ryan years. So this is kind of like his third go around with a winning team. And he's got a lot of good pieces for Stefanski to use. You know, so I think that there is going to be a very high floor for this offense. And I really don't, and like, I consider myself a Kevin Stefanski doubter. I really am. But if there was going to be a place where Kevin was going to go to and succeed, it's going to be Atlanta, because that whole run game is set up for him. You know, you guys have a really good offensive line. You know, Lindstrom is still there, right? You have Jake Matthews still there. You know, two talented players on the offensive line. You know, Drake London is a big body X receiver, you know, that can make those contested catches. You know, we talked about Kyle Pitts, the unicorn. And then, of course, all pro running back Bijan Robinson. So, I would say this to Falcons fans for this year, you're going to be very entertained by what you see on offense. Now that conversation of what happens after, can they get past the wild card round? Are you going to be a Super Bowl contender? What happens in year 2 when Stefanski has to adjust? Those are all questions that are, very valid and are going to have to be answered. But it's going to be a kind of wait and find out. But I know for a fact that out of the gate, this offense is going to look a lot different. And the wide zone is very QB friendly. So maybe there's a guy in the draft, right, that maybe he's not an elevator, but he's smart enough to know the playbook and mature enough to let Stefanski coach him up, like maybe a Ty Simpson, maybe a Carson Beck, right? So I think I think that there's a really good opportunity here. And I think that, again, I think that there's going to be a high floor on this offense. And I think you guys are going to like what you see.
All right, I got a question because some people in the chat asked this. It kind of hinted towards it. So, we got Kirk Cousins on the contract, but how the way the contract is structured, it's a good chance he may not be here in 2026. So we have Michael Penix Jr., who we drafted in 2024. He got injured this past season. When he started week 1, we don't know yet. But what's your thoughts about Michael Penix Jr. playing in Kevin Stefanski's system?
I mean, it's very QB friendly. I've seen quarterbacks like PJ Walker, quarterbacks like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Hell, Dylan Gabriel won a game in this offense. So I think it's very QB friendly. So I think that if Michael Penix buckles down and kind of cleans up a lot of things and stays healthy, I mean that's the biggest thing with Michael Penix is that he just needs to stay healthy, right? Wow. Now if I'm Matt Ryan, right, I'm kind of looking at it and saying like, hey, yeah, like Michael Penix has shown us flashes. And I don't want to give up on him, but you can't bank on Michael Penix, if that makes sense. Like Michael Penix is one of those kind of question mark quarterbacks. It's kind of the same thing with how I viewed JJ McCarthy coming into the season. Now I'm not going to sit here and say Michael Penix is going to turn out like JJ McCarthy and is going to struggle like he did. But when you have a player that's as injury prone as he is and has a play style of where he's a runner, you got to have a contingency plan. But I think that they might be in kind of the same boat to where the Browns are, come training camp, to where they're going to have a QB competition and it's going to be a vet versus a younger quarterback that really quite hasn't proven himself yet. So I'm here to say, don't give up on Michael Penix just yet, but at the same time, don't bank on him because this is a very QB friendly offense. And if the guy stays healthy and puts his head down, he can win games with Kevin Stefanski.
You know what? I just sitting here kind of listening to this. It reminds me of Arthur Smith all over again.
It reminds me of that, and it reminds me of '98 Falcons. It reminds me of getting back to bread and butter.
Yeah,
what the Atlanta Falcons are all about. So I'm glad he actually said. So I actually have a question. All right, so I love to hear more so the negatives than the positives, because I think you can learn a lot from the negative. So if there were one thing about Kevin Stefanski and his offense that you would say, because me personally looking at Zach Robinson and Raheem Morris, they both came in. He was a defensive guy. He worked the offensive side of the ball as well, wide receiver, defensive backs. But he was supposed to have, the passing concepts right, but we never saw that. Instead, we saw David Seals at wide receiver. So do you think that wide receivers in this offense and Kevin Stefanski's offense would be a little bit more, would it be more productive or would it be more explosive? Because I think Falcons fans want to hear explosive. How would you categorize the Atlanta Falcons wide receivers, Kevin Stefanski's wide receivers?
It's gonna be more efficiency over volume, if that makes any sense. Like the yards per catch is gonna be up, but the targets and the receptions are going to be down. And that's just simply what Kevin does. The negative with his offense is that he has a hard time feeding the hot hand. He's all about the chess match. He's okay. I see this on tape. We're going to line it up this way and attack this guy. Now, it doesn't matter who we're attacking him with, but we want to attack this guy. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. But there's a lot of opportunity for guys like Drake London and Kyle Pitts to eat in a heavy play action offense. The biggest issue that I have with him, with Kevin, is just like he has a tendencies to get scared and kind of abandon the run and spread everything out. And it wasn't even early on too when he had it with Nick Chubb. Great example. Dylan Gabriel's making his second start in the NFL. They're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, right? 2 of the first 3 plays are out of empty. Now you tell me, what the hell is that all about? Right? Because you're facing one of the better front sevens in football. You have a future Hall of Famer at defensive tackle, Cam Hayward. I love to troll Steeler fans about TJ Watt, but he's pretty damn good. And there's a chance that he has a gold jacket. And then you have Alex Highsmith on the other side, who has quietly had a damn good career in Pittsburgh. And you're telling me you open up the game with empty? So there's going to be a lot of those questionable schematic choices that Kevin's going to have. And there's a lot of times where he picks matchup over strength. And it's going to be really maddening to see because, you're going to have just using a hypothetical here. Let's just say they're playing they're going to be playing the Buccaneers, right? And Antoine Winfield Jr. is out that game supposedly. He's going to want to attack that safety every time. And he's going to attack it with several different players. It's not going to be, oh, hey, Drake London's, hot and having one hell of a game. We're just going to have him keep attacking that guy. No, he's going to attack him with Drake London. He's going to attack him, with Kyle Pitts, with all kinds of other receivers. Because again, he's all about the chess match rather than feeding the hot hand. So it's going to be problematic. Because I know that there's going to be times where you're going to see Bijan Robinson averaging for 7 yards a carry. And it's going to come the fourth quarter, and Kevin Stefanski is going to sit with his, play sheet, and it's going to have on his notes that Bijan Robinson has over 21 carries. And he's going to say, okay, well, it's a long season, and I think that I can win without leaning on him. And then you're going to end up losing a close game, and you're going to ask him, hey, why didn't Bijan Robinson have the carries? And then he's going to say, well, it's not that simple and about the game plan, and I trust the running backs coach. And then he's going to say all this stuff that gives you a nothing answer. But in reality, again, he's going to pick schematic matchups over personnel. And that's what kind of hurt him in Cleveland. So that's kind of the one thing that I'd watch out for. Now, the good thing about Atlanta is that they have a lot of pieces. This offense can attack a defense a lot of different ways, So, and I haven't even mentioned, Tyler Algier left yet. Now I don't know what his contract situation is. He still with the team, right? Is he going to be a free agent?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a free agent.
Yeah.
Well, if they don't bring him back, they need to bring in another legit running back too, because you're going to need an answer for when Kevin Stefanski ultimately pulls Bijan off the field, because I already know, because he was like this with Nick Chubb, and hell, he was like that this year with Quinshon Judkins, to where he sees the number of attempts and he's saying, like long season, I want to save him. So he's gonna pull him off the sideline, and you guys are gonna be looking at each other. You're gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? But that's going to be the maddening part of it. That's going to be the kind of the catch-22 with Kevin, to where the scheme is great and he's one hell of a smart guy, but there's too many times where there's a galaxy brain play call instead of, oh, hey, this is working, we're going to run the brakes off this guy.
Yeah. So I know we mentioned about, abandoning the run. A lot of play callers these days now, they quick to abandon the run. So I noticed that was Stefanski did that too, but Zach Robinson done it. It's a lot of hell. Even Kyle Shanahan, he does it sometimes.
A lot.
Like a lot of if it doesn't work the first several attempts, they abandon it completely. Or, if we get down to score, oh, well, we got to pass the ball. We got to get points on the board. So a lot of these play callers, they do abandon the run very early. I don't necessarily think that's a Kevin Stefanski problem. I think this is just a football problem, because I see it a lot in college football. And, when I catch high school football too, I see it as well. I do want to talk about Bill Musgrave. A dark horse conversation that hasn't really been brought up a lot. He was a consultant or offensive assistant or quarterbacks coach for Stefanski. Is that correct?
Yeah. So he was both. He was an offensive assistant in 2024, and then they promoted him to QB coach in 2025. I mean, Bill's a guy that like played in the league back in the day, and he's got one hell of a resume. So, if you guys were to bring him in as a quarterback coach, I would say that's a pretty damn good hire. And he's certainly going to be a guy to where like he has a lot of knowledge to give. So,
Yeah, we're very familiar with him here in Atlanta. A lot of people don't remember, but he was here when Matt Ryan was a rookie. He was here for Matt Ryan's, I think, first 3-4 years. I think it was 3 years. 3 years when Matt Ryan was here. And I really think, as far as Matt Ryan's development, he has to thank Bill Musgrave for that. So I really think Matt probably looked at Stefanski staff and he was like, okay, yeah, of course I know Bill Musgrave. He helped me along the way. So what's your thoughts about Bill Musgrave potentially? And we know Tommy Reese, he's joining as the OC. We got Brick here as our DC. We don't know who our special team coordinator is. Bill Callahan's our O-line coach. So we're gonna start seeing positions getting filled very soon. But what's your thoughts about Bill Musgrave?
I mean, from what I've seen, just from press conferences, and how he is around the team, the guy's a fountain of knowledge. So I think that would be an excellent, thing to do. And I think that's something that's being really undersold, and it's not his fault because, he's under a head coach that's going to be calling the plays. But I really thought that Tommy Reese, was very valuable as an offensive coordinator. Now, his issues were, in my opinion, just because he was inexperienced. When he took over as OC, there were a bit more penalties. But in terms of play call, in terms of understanding, in terms of putting a game plan together and a script, I thought Tommy Reese did a damn good job. And he's definitely a guy that, isn't afraid to run the football. So, you have Reese, you have Bill Callahan. If they were to bring in Musgraves and they run back, basically a former Cleveland Browns coaching staff, you guys would be, pretty set there offensively in Atlanta. And I do think that it was really cool of them to keep, Jeff Ulbrich, I believe the defense coordinator, right? Yeah. So, I thought that was really cool to keep him because he had those DBs flying around, and having fun, playing out there, and they played with a lot of energy too. But looking at it, your guys' defense is really coming along nicely. And I think it's unfair because, a lot of people look at this Atlanta Falcons team and they go, okay, well, they're loaded offensively, but you guys starting to get some pieces on defense, right? The Jalen Walker pick, I think he's still coming along. And he's got a little bit more to go, but I thought he showed some promise in his first year. James Pierce, a guy that they traded up for, I think has certainly lived up to the name. For sure. You have veterans in the back end, like AJ Terrell, and Jesse Bates, right? So, keeping your defensive coordinator there, I think was a really good idea because you want to keep, the Atlanta Falcons to me had the offseason that they needed to have, right? Because the defense was coming together and you didn't want to break up the band, but the offense needed a facelift. So you kept the DC and you brought in an offensive coordinator that can base an offense around running the ball and play action. Because let's be honest, the strength of that offense is Bijan Robinson. That guy is, and I still find it funny because the analysts, and they do this every year with a running back, right? They pick his game apart. Oh, well, he doesn't have an elite burst and he doesn't have that second gear. And, yeah, he knows how to read a hole, but like how much of that was his offensive line in college? And then you have Bijan Robinson putting up 2,000-yard all-purpose seasons. Okay. The guy's an absolute dog. So, he's your best weapon on offense, and you still have a little bit of question mark in the quarterback room. So to me, this is the best situation because and let's just say hypothetically that Michael Penix stays healthy and he is the starter week 1. Michael Penix is put in a brilliant situation because he is in an offense that is going to run the football and run heavy play action. And that's where quarterbacks can really make their money because you don't have to sit here and guess coverages and, all that stuff. You fake the handoff and there's going to be a hole open somewhere. Some safety or linebacker or corner is going to bite and somebody's going to become open. So, I think that this is a really good constructed idea for them. And again, I say this as a guy that wanted Stefanski gone after the 2021 season, and I think that a lot of the issues that Kevin Stefanski had, now granted, he did a bad job picking quarterbacks. The Deshaun Watson thing blew up in their face. He had an opportunity to pick his quarterback this year, and instead of saying, hey, I want Jackson Dart or Tyler Shuck, he goes, I'm going to reach for Dylan Gabriel. Huge problem. But he's out of Cleveland. He's in a new place. He's got his all-pro running back. He's got some damn good pieces, on the offense. And he doesn't have to worry about defense like he did when he came to Cleveland. Because when he came to Cleveland in 2020, he brought his buddy Joe Woods with him. Now, another issue that Kevin has is that he has a lot of loyalty to his staff. So if there's going to be somebody struggling, he's not going to fire him in season. That's just not him. He's, he deems himself too professional for that, too stable for that. It is what it is. Personally, I'm not a fan of it because I'd rather see a coach do whatever he can to win and adjust in real game time. But he's coming to Atlanta and the defense is already established. He doesn't have to worry about that. Jeff Albrecht has his guys humming and he's going to have that defense ready to go. So the only thing that Kevin has to worry about is offense. Now, what he does with special teams, I mean, for you guys, I hope that it's not Bubba Ventrone. Now, me personally, if you guys are the team that gets Bubba Ventrone out of Cleveland, I will personally write every single Falcons fan a thank you card because, here in Cleveland, we are fed up with Bubba. But my point is, no. So The defense is already ready made, and the offense has some pieces. They just need a director, to get everybody going. So I think that this is a really good situation starting out. And again, like I've said before, the floor on this offense is going to be a lot higher in years past. And Falcons fans are kind of look at that and kind of squint a little bit, and they're going to say, wow, this kind of looks a lot like the Shanahan offense that we had running with Matt Ryan.
All right. So this is going to be probably my last question, and then K Styles and Mike and Jew, they can chime in. So to for my take, sum everything up for Stefanski's time in Cleveland, do you think most of the accountability falls on him, or most of the accountability falls on the front office of the Cleveland Browns, as far as the failures of just not having the stability that you guys needed?
It was both. It was definitely both, and I hate to have that cop out answer, but that's just the real truth, right? Because even though they weren't hired together, they've worked hand in hand. There is no way that they would have taken that swing for Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski wasn't on board. Both Kevin Stefanski and the front office, Paul T. Podesta and Andrew Berry, were considering moving on from Baker well before the end of the season. I believe the timeline is like October, November, where they really started digging into Deshaun Watson. They're saying, oh, hey, this guy will be available. Like, we should make a move. There just isn't enough of that with Baker. And again, I mean, the narrative that Stefanski's never had his quarterback is so unbelievably false, because there is no way that the entire front office and everybody that was doing draft prep looked at Dylan Gabriel and saw the metrics, saw the tape, saw what he did against Ohio State, saw that and said, yeah, we can reach for him. Like, it's worth it. He's going to be a starter in here. And if he's just a backup, it's fine. He didn't even play well enough to be a backup. So there are a lot of issues that happened since 2020, but it definitely falls on both the front office and Kevin Stefanski, because I mean, granted, there were situations that Kevin Stefanski was put in, but look at his he didn't want to fire Joe Woods in the middle of the 2022 season, and that lost them a lot of games. He didn't want to bench Baker when he was hurt. That ended up losing them a franchise QB. He didn't want to coach Watson hard in 2024. That's on him. He could have stood up for Alex Van Pelt and said, hey, this offense works. We shouldn't switch to something that none of us know about and bring in a guy that got fired from his last job, Ken Dorsey. But he didn't. So it's definitely on both. But I will say this, he's walking into a lot better, stable organization. And it really pains me to say this, because I'm a diehard Browns fan. I've been covering this team and writing articles since 2021, right? But the more that I learn about this team and how they operate, the more frustrating I get. I mean, look now, they are one of two teams that are doing a head coaching search, and they haven't fulfilled the Rooney Rule. The other team is Buffalo, and Buffalo just fired their head coach on Monday. Like, they are day 17 into Jimmy Haslam's 120 days, but they're on the same level as a team that fired their coach on Monday. So my point is, it's on both. It's 50-50. Now, a lot of times, just like anybody in the NFL, whether it's a coach, a GM, a player, you learn from your mistakes. So there is a chance where Kevin took a step back and said, you know what? I learned some things. I learned that I have to adjust and I have to do everything that I can to win. And it's not just about winning my way. But at the same time, when you look at it, this really kind of seems like a perfect marriage and somebody that can get the Falcons back to where they need to be, which is winning a bad division. because and I'm sure that you guys have this talk, right? You know, you look around, okay, the Saints, they're a middling team, you know, at best. You have the Panthers who walked backwards and fell into a wild card game. And then you have, you know, the Buccaneers, which, you know, I'm a huge Baker fan, hence the, you know, the 6 jersey back from 2020. But, you know, there are times where he is up and he is down. And the NFC South every year until somebody gets a Hall of Fame quarterback and runs away with it, it's going to be competitive. It's going to come down to week 18 every year. And you are going to have an opportunity to compete for a playoff spot. Hell, I thought the Falcons really underachieved to start the year, but somehow they were right in it. Like, I want to say that you guys didn't get eliminated till like the second or third, you know, last week of the season. So, you know, I think this is a good hire. I think that a lot of Falcons fans need to kind of take a breather and like, I get it. Raheem Morris, you know, you had some success with this guy. He's likable. But you need to have the offensive guy. And, you know, if he couldn't bring in the offensive guy and get things going the way how they needed to be, a change needed to be made. And I thought that for who was available now, granted, I think the best coach, you know, is still on the market, Sean McDermott, but they didn't know that a couple of days ago. You know, they looked at it and they said, realistically, our offense needs a facelift. Let's go get an offensive guy. And that's what they did with Kevin Stefanski. And I really think that this is going to be a good marriage for Atlanta. Again, I'm not a Stefanski believer at all, but I think just at the bare minimum, the floor is hard, it's concrete, and it's higher than it's ever been in Atlanta in a very, very long time.
Good, because we got people asking us, please, pretty much asking us to talk them off a ledge and say, how is it higher? Please explain to us why is it higher. So, you know, like, yeah. K-Styles, what do you got to say, man?
Like I said, man, what it pretty much sounds to me, it kind of sounds like Arthur Smith all over again. What I'm hearing, like you said, nobody's perfect. But one thing that I will say, like kind of compared to what Raheem Morris was here, is you do have an identity, you do have some type of idea of what you want to run and stuff like that. It just sounds like to me like one of the biggest issues is overthinking shit, and I'm thinking they're looking at the play action game that was lacking down here in Atlanta. They're looking at the foundational offense, like you said, like you said, Matt. It marries into what this roster is. So now it's like, okay, now it's an opportunity for redemption. We know what you can do. Can you adjust? Don't overthink the shit. Because I think that's kind of one of the issues that Arthur Smith had when he was down here. He had a propensity to overthink stuff sometimes, and it kind of put him in bad situations as well, especially as a play caller. So, like I said, like I agree with Mike. You want to hear the cons first, so you can evaluate, and then you can hear the pros. Because the thing about it is, we can always talk about, oh, I just want to hear the good. I just want to hear the good. I want to hear the good. No, you got to hear the bad too, because you don't want to be shocked if the bad happens. So, all I say, like you said, it just sounds like Arthur Smith all over again. But it's a little bit more experience. Now, is Matt Ryan is going to be one of those guys to kind of, okay, we expect this. This is the vision that we have. Don't mess this up. Is he one of those guys? We going to find out. But, hey, you pretty much broke it down exactly how I thought it was going to be. I appreciate that, man.
Hey, no worries. I mean, it's it's funny because Stefanski, for as much crap as I give that man, in terms of him in the community, he's been great. He's an avid churchgoer. He's a big, on charitable work. And frankly, he's the longest tenured head coach that I've had in my lifetime. 6 years in Cleveland might as well be 25 with the how, with how stuff runs, so he's going to give Atlanta that level of consistency. And I think for such a well-run organization with a lot of good young pieces, that is what you guys need.
All right, Jew.
Hey man, he hit the nail on the head. Both K Styles and Mac. At the end of the day, I said this in pretty much every video that I've dropped on my channel since Raheem was fired. We had to bring in a coach that could get the most out of this offense. Like Zach Robinson just wasn't it. The inexperience is what killed our last coaching the coaching staff that we had previously. Like when you look at Raheem Morris, I really feel like the biggest mistake he made was bringing in two guys that were inexperienced, Zach Robinson and Jimmy Lake. That was his biggest mistake. If you look at the Falcons with Dan Quinn, he insulated himself with guys that he knew could get the job done. Really, if you look at that Dan Quinn coaching staff when he was here, all of those guys pretty much at this point, a lot of those guys are head coaches for a reason. The Matt LaFleur, the Mike McDaniels, that to me, that was one of the best coaching staffs I've ever seen. But all of the guys that he had on that coaching staff in 2016, 2017, when we went to the Super Bowl. So what I'm seeing out of Coach Stefanski is I see a lot more experience on his coaching staff. So he has people that can tell him where he's wrong. Like you talk about having a Bill Callahan on your staff, he's not going to take no stuff from Coach Stefanski. I'm going to tell you right now, dude been in the league over 30 years. So he going to tell him, you got to fire me before you going to tell me how to run my offensive line or run this room. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I feel like Raheem Morris didn't have. He didn't have nobody that could challenge him. Outside of Jeff Ulbrich, nobody was on that staff going to challenge him. And when somebody did try to challenge him, he ended up firing my wide receivers coach when he did stand up to him. So at the end of the day, one thing that I can say, when you say our floor is higher, and with Stefanski, I believe that because even with prior to Raheem Morris, with us having Arthur Smith, the floor I felt like was higher because, like K-Style said, we knew what to expect. So one thing I can guarantee, we're going to see a better offense than we've seen these past 2 years under Zach Robinson, because Zach Robinson didn't know how to set up plays. When you talk about the first script, he couldn't even set up a script right. I'm just going to be honest with you. Talk about the first 12 plays in the game. He didn't know how to set up a script. So we know what Coach
and four with damn tight end screens, okay? I'm with tight end screens.
Exactly. So
we sitting here throwing tight end flanker screens in the
second. This man throwing tight end screens on a second and 15.
Exactly.
On a second and 15, this man up here running tight end screens. I'm like,
that's why I said, man, we're gonna see a lot better offense. And I feel like what Kay said, you're gonna see more traditional. I want to see I formation. I want to see motion, but I want to see different plays. And when you talked about the going 5 wide, you gave us PTSD, because I don't know how many times I seen Zach Robinson. You get into the dang on red zone, you want to go 5 wide and spread. Why? Just run the ball. Just run the ball. That's all you got to do is go back to your roots. And like I said, I know Bill Callahan is gonna rip somebody a new one. If we get in within the 10-yard line and we don't run the ball, I can guarantee you Bill Callahan's gonna rip somebody a new one. So that's why I said I like when you got guys on your staff that even got more experience than you, because he's gonna have somebody to answer to. And that's what Raheem Morris didn't have. He didn't have anybody to hold him accountable. So I'll leave it at that. And that's what Arthur Blank been talking about. Him and Matt Ryan, they're gonna hold these guys accountable. So if he doesn't do it, if somebody on his staff don't do it, Matt Ryan as the president is gonna do it.
Yeah, cause I think with that Callahan thing, as we already know, with Atlanta, is going to be expectations to get to that next level. So if you have a Callahan in here, you already know he gonna put his foot in somebody's ass. You already know. And that's kind of like the first step in the right direction is, like you said, bringing in those coaches that got that experience. Because like I said, that's what was kind of missing here in Atlanta for years is coaches in certain spots that have experience. And like I said, man, bring on that I formation, bring that power I. Shoot, I'll take it. I think a lot of people down here tired of the pistol anyway, but yeah. No, hold on. Yeah, Jerome, yes. And everybody know fullback is my favorite position. Make fullbacks great again, damn it.
Yeah, if we bring
Yes.
look, if we sign a fullback, oh man, I'm gonna love it. If we bring a fullback, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself after that when I hear that news.
I know what I'm gonna do to myself.
Shut. No, we ain't doing. No, you ain't. But as far as and I know we kind of talked about, like I said, the history as a fan with the Cleveland Browns. And I know Don usually asks this question, but like I said, who were some of your favorite players growing up outside of Baker Mayfield? Was there like any other players in the organization that was kind of like your favorite players, growing up as a
fan? So like the first wide receiver that like caught my attention was Joe Jaravicious.
Oh, I love Joe Jaravicious.
I remember like my first memory of him was him playing in Seattle against Pittsburgh, and like it was like I was always a big. I mean, I've always been a big hater on Pittsburgh, so watching him play against them, and then he came to Cleveland. I was all about that. But it was kind of hard to have favorite players in Cleveland because they didn't really last long. You had guys like Joe Hayden that would do 5 years, and then next thing you know, you'd get cut. I played center in high school and college. So Alex Mack was one of the guys that I looked up to. I wore 55 in college, so he was I want to say the best that he did was Pro Bowl and second team All Pro. But like in my mind, he was probably one of the best centers I ever watched. I was big fan of Jamal Lewis terrorized the Browns for years, but those 2 years in Cleveland, watching him run the football was just magical. I really thought that guys like, Jordan Cameron or, Andrew Hawkins, or, Taylor Gabriel. I thought that there were going to be offensive weapons that would stay around a bit longer, but they didn't. So, funny enough, a lot of the guys that were my favorite watching were just defensive and offensive linemen,
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
So, I will say this, about Cleveland. It wasn't like for as bad as everybody thinks that it is now. There was a lot more turnover in years past, so at least there's some kind of consistency. And I'll let you guys go on this. So the Twitter page, the heavy hitter, I sent you guys a video, of Bill Callahan's the past year in Tennessee. So he did this in Cleveland. He invented a different kind of football sled, and he calls it Bertha. Now, Bertha has more weight on it than a traditional sled, and it's lower to the ground. So this thing only moves if you hit it just right. And it's so funny because we saw we saw offensive linemen in Cleveland, you know, push this same sled. Joel Petonio talked about it all the time about how Bill would just whoop their ass every practice, and he would have them push Bertha around this big sled. You know, so if you guys get excited about the run game, you know, Bill Callahan, you know, is a guy that I would suggest looking into because you guys are going to be excited, you know, seeing what's going to go on up front in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, Bertha, big girl now. Yeah,
Oh,
we see that. We see
I remember Bertha.
When you said Bertha, I already knew.
Mhm.
Like any woman that's named Bertha, just know she big and she can whoop a man's ass.
And that's what this sled does, man.
I remember
Exactly.
that. Oh man.
But
we appreciate it. We truly appreciate it, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, like I said, I just want to throw. Y'all notice where he said they don't last long. You see, he didn't name Peyton Hillis, right?
Oh, that one broke my heart, man. I had a 40 jersey. Oh my god! And he'll even tell you that he messed up with that contract here, where he had the flu. No, he was sitting out games because of his contract, and it ended up biting him in the back. Man, dude,
Damn.
we were voting for that Madden cover in droves, dude. In droves. Everybody had that 40 jersey. You know, I remember going to that Ravens game, and my first thought is wow, I'm going to see Peyton Hillis run live. Like I was so excited to get Madden the first day that it came out because it was the first Browns player on the cover, and he was wearing the bulldog face mask with the visor, and he looked so badass. Oh, it was awesome. I mean, he ran for 150 yards on the Patriots. He was hurdling safeties. It was just mind-boggling because he was basically Mike Allstott, but in just a 1-year capsule, you know. So that was, oh man, yeah. It's just,
Yeah,
For the people who don't remember, for the people who don't,
hurts too much.
Yeah, for the people who don't remember Peyton Hillis, he was Saquon Barkley before Saquon Barkley.
No, you didn't.
I'm
No.
just gonna say,
Oh, you didn't.
He was Saquon, like he was. Am I lying?
We gonna let you got that. You got that.
I'm just gonna say, like, when he was good, when that year, the year before he was on the
That year, that was a phenom year because it just came out of nowhere. Cause I was about to say who? Because I remember somebody else was the starting running back that year before Hillis got there. Was it? I forgot. I gotta go back in the archives.
Yeah, I forgot too, but I remember because like Hillis.
Is it Chris Obanaya?
I'm like, this dude's a fullback. This dude's a fullback running like this. I'm like, bruh.
But remember, that's kind of how it was when they got Reuben Drones too.
Mm-hmm.
When they got Reuben Drones.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. I mean, that's what, 2005, 2006?
Yeah,
had to be 2006.
Yeah, because I remember Reuben.
It was him and Lee Suggs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Reuben Drones, he played for Denver, I believe, and then he went to Cleveland.
And then he went to Cleveland, and like you said, he went. That was right around that time where if you was a running back for the Denver Broncos, you was guaranteed a 1,200-yard season.
Yeah, because Mike Shanahan, that's all he was doing. He gonna run the ball.
But I will, like I said, I will throw another name in here. I think he might remember. It was actually one of my favorite Browns players, and that was Lee Bonney.
The corner. Ooh, the cornerback. Yeah.
See. They thought I could. Usually, I will say fullback, offensive line, stuff like that. See, I threw them for a loop. I said a corner.
Wow.
Yeah. Like outside.
Man. You're naming some mid-2000s guys. I'm impressed.
Hey, we is football guys over here, boy. We are football guys. It's not just Falcon fan stuff over here. Like I said, that's why we love having these conversations here because we like getting the perspective of all the teams and stuff like that. Because hey, we just football guys. Derek Anderson was another one-hit wonder that a
Yeah,
lot of people, somebody said in the damn chat.
and then I remember y'all brought in Mike Hogan to be the president of football one time, and
Oh
then
yeah, I remember
I,
that.
my favorite Cleveland Brown player, I gotta go Braylon Edwards, man. I know he didn't really live up to the hype, but
We
that's
know,
my boy.
we know.
No, that's now, but it could change in a few years to Mason Graham. So
Well, I want to say he still has the record post 99 for most receiving touchdowns in a season by a Brown.
yeah, he does. He still owns that.
Because what
So,
it was 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was 15. Yep, I think so.
look, I'm a huge Michigan fan, so that's just who I am.
You usually when he names all his favorite players, they usually play in Michigan. So anytime you hear say we know, or we say, and why is that, Don? We already know what that. Ooh, that's a good question. Somebody asked a question. Somebody asked a question. Josh Gordon, one of the biggest what ifs. Josh Gordon.
So this is a topic that I get into a lot because I loved Josh Gordon. I remember his rookie year when we got him in the supplemental draft and he was wearing the number 13 and he was just setting the league on fire. Then he got suspended 3 games and then still ended up being an absolute dog. He's still the only wide receiver to record 200 yards in 2 back-to-back games. Now, here's what I'll say. It was not just the weed. Everybody just talks about the weed. But he had a legitimate opioid addiction. And this is not what a lot of people talk about because not a lot of people talk about the NFL and their relationship with painkillers. It's you know what I mean? It's just not a conversation. Like they don't want to talk about Toradol. They don't want to talk about the trainers that were handing out opioids like they were candies after games and destroying guys' livers and getting them heavily addicted to painkillers. But Josh he even told you like in interviews there was one time that he was talking about how because everybody asked him like, hey Josh, like how did you know because you've been in and out of rehab, like how did you know that you hit rock bottom? And he was just like, I knew it when I was walking along the streets of Florida at 3 a.m. looking for my next fix. His biggest thing wasn't even weed, it was promethazone. Like he was on the syrup and like painkillers. Like it wasn't just weed. Like everybody said, oh, if the weed was legal, he would have been fine. No, he still would have been failing drug tests. I mean, that's just Josh was, and it was really heartbreaking because he was a generational athlete. And I am glad that he after being cut by the Browns in 2018, he found his way to the Patriots, and he was able to have some success, so I'm very happy for him in that regard. But it wasn't just the weed, man. I mean, he had so many issues, but the good thing is that he did turn his life around and he did end his career, on a good note. And, for me, like, you never want to judge a guy for cleaning up his life and all that stuff. So love the quick and stint of success that he had in Cleveland, and it's definitely something that's not going to be broken anytime soon. I mean, you see all those meme accounts like every other week, they're posting about Josh Gordon. Why? Because we've never seen anything like Josh Gordon. That back-to-back 200-yard receiving record, that's never being broken. That never, not once. Like I can't imagine another wide receiver just getting the targets to be able to get over 200 yards, let alone do it in back-to-back games.
And speaking of like the Toradol and stuff like that, because I'm kind of Yeah, because I kind of follow like Kyle Turley, who was also kind of like a advocate against that, and he's been doing it for a long time. So yeah, I've kind of heard about those like the addictions and stuff like that. Because like another one, Vincent Jackson, as everybody already knows about that story.
Rest in peace.
But yeah, like yeah, man, that stuff. They want you back on the field real quick, but that stuff will hurt you in the long run if you don't get if you don't get the help right away. So, like I said, man, I'm glad he turned it. I'm glad he turned his life around and got cleared off of it. So that's good to hear.
Absolutely.
Oh man, so fellas, y'all got anything else?
Hey man, we're good, man. We're good, man.
We straight.
Oh man, so hey Mac, man, we definitely appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with us, man. And we definitely going to have to do this again. Cause like you said, we do got the draft right around the corner. Like you said, maybe we go link it up again.
And then we play the Browns this year too. So
Oh
that
yeah. That's right. We do play the
we
Browns this year.
Oh,
we gonna
that's
be
going to be fun. That's going
yeah
to be
we
fun because Kevin Stefanski's facing that Browns defense at home, and that's definitely one that I'm licking my chops as well as Myles Garrett. So, no, but it's it's all in good fun. Thank you again for having me on. It was awesome to hear the perspective from Falcons fans. Because especially being on the complete other side of the conference, it's like I just don't see it. Like I just don't, you know what I mean? I don't see it. Thank you, Raymond. But I don't really see it a lot. So it's cool to hear like a different perspective and, see how the other half of the, league lives. So, so that's really cool. And again, I mean, I think you guys will be satisfied with what happens, this season, at least offensively.
Okay, definitely, man. So, hey, like you said, we got all your handles. Like you said, we're gonna put it in our community tab as well as our X account. So, well, Twitter account. It's still weird just to say it. I don't know why saying that. It just makes you want to throw up. But on the Twitter account and stuff like that. So y'all make sure y'all follow Matt because, like you said, the insight that he gives us, not only just on the Kevin Stefanski side, but as y'all already hear the football knowledge that he has. Um, y'all definitely make sure y'all get him a check out, man. So, hey, we appreciate everybody. Hey, we got another one coming up tomorrow, 6-man convo. So we gonna we probably might dive deep more so into the coaching staff in itself. So, hey, till next time, people, we ain't here to play.
Oh no.
We here to stay.
Oh yeah, dig it.
You ain't got to go home.
but you got to get the hell up out of here.
Deuces.